Hi guys, I'm Courtney.
And I'm Lisa.
And welcome to the next chapter in the Book of the Dead, brought to you by Darkcast Network, indie podcasts with a twist. Hi guys, welcome to another chapter. Lisa's back.
Yes, I'm here. I missed everybody.
So, back to our regularly scheduled programming. In a couple of weeks, I have an episode that she's also not going to be on. She was away on vacation, which was rude, but whatever. We're not going to talk about it. So, we're going to just jump right into this case. You guys know that on the Book of the Dead, we cover a lot of different cases, and a lot of them are murders, whether or not they are unsolved. But there are times where I come across a case that isn't as clear. The story I have for you today is one with not a lot of information, but it's one that deserves to be heard. I have spoken with and gotten to know the sister of the victim in this case, and she and her family have been fighting for answers for 8 years. They have suffered a loss that on the surface seems to be very cut and dry, but when you dig deeper and read between the lines, there's a lot of questions that haven't been answered, and it's far past time to get those answers. This is the unexplained death of Kayla Seago. Now, as I tell you about this case, you're probably going to ask yourself why it's unexplained or undetermined. Again, on the surface, it seems obvious what happened, but by the time I get to the end, you'll understand that not everything is what it seems.
It's very cryptic. You're being very cryptic today.
Kayla Seago was born on April 23rd, 1990. She was the oldest of 2 sisters, but she did have... It's a large family, bunch of siblings. Growing up, she and her sister Lexi were incredibly close, and there was a bit of an age gap between them, but they were best friends. And I'm actually going to have Lexi tell you about their relationship.
Yeah, Kayla was my best friend. We were so close, even though we did have an age gap. She was 8 years older than me. We were close forever. As long as I can remember, I've always wanted to be just like her. One thing you should know, if you know Kayla, you know she loved red. Red was her favorite. She was actually, growing up, she was a tomboy, but as she got older, she actually turned into a girly girl, and she started getting her nails done, and she realized that she likes being girly. When she became a mom, she changed in the most amazing ways possible. Those kids brought out the very best in her. Unfortunately, she wasn't in that relationship with Billy.
So you can hear that Lexi absolutely idolized Kayla. Kayla was her best friend, wanted to be just like her.
I think that's awesome.
They had a really, really great relationship, and they were incredibly close. Now, as you heard, Lexi said that Kayla was dating a guy named Billy. Now, Kayla started dating this guy named William Opsel when she was a teenager, and he's actually relatively well known in Rockford, Illinois, where this story takes place. From my understanding, his family owns a pizza parlor, and he was an aspiring musician or rapper. In fact, his stage name was Billy the Kid, or BTK. Now, the initials could just be a coincidence, but you'll see why the irony is not lost on me, that he has the same initials that Dennis Rader used as his self-proclaimed serial killer moniker. Could just be a coincidence. Irony is not lost on me. Now, they dated for a long time, and they had 3 children together, but their relationship was not healthy at all. There was a history of domestic violence all throughout the relationship, and Lexi is going to tell us some of what she remembers from that time.
Since she was 16 years old, and to be quite honest with you, the abuse started very, very quickly. I remember the first time, I was 8 years old at the time. She had just met Billy. We were at my mom's house. She was still living at my mom's house still. And I was in the backyard playing, and I heard a bunch of yelling and commotion, and it was him. And I remember she was hanging halfway out the car, and he tried to speed off with her halfway in, halfway out. And then I remember him getting out and bashing her head into the car. There's been tons of incidences like that. I mean, the abuse was horrible. It was so bad that everybody knew about it. Everybody begged her to, leave, and she tried a million times. When you look at her moving history, my sister moved like all the time. She was constantly breaking leases or moving as soon as her lease was up because she was trying to get away. But she did, unfortunately, like many women do, go back. And unfortunately, she wasn't one of the lucky ones who got away.
So you can clearly tell that throughout the 8 years they were together, as you heard, Kayla suffered a lot of abuse, something that no one should ever go through, and something that unfortunately so many people do go through, men or women. Now, Kayla did say enough is enough, and she got a restraining order against Billy, but as we know, restraining orders aren't always the most effective. It is also stated in the coroner's inquest, which was provided to me by Lexi, that Billy claimed that he and Kayla were still seeing each other despite this order of protection, which could be true since we know that it's so hard for victims of domestic violence to get away from their abuser. We also know that many times police don't take domestic violence situations seriously until it is too late.
Well, most of the time, a restraining order isn't worth the paper it's written on.
That's also incredibly true. Now, this abuse would come to a head on January 11, 2015. According to that inquest, on the evening of January 11th, Billy and some of his friends were at a house down the street from Kayla's home drinking and playing cards, and Kayla is 24 at this time. I am assuming that Billy is also around the same age at this time. Now, this is where some discrepancies in the story come in. Between 1 and 2 a.m., Kayla arrives at this home as well. Now, I don't know why she was there. I don't know if one of Billy's friends invited her or if Billy himself did, but either way, she comes to this little gathering and she stays for about an hour before she and Billy, according to Billy himself, get into an argument and she leaves to go back home. However, according to Billy's friends, at the time of the argument, Billy had punched Kayla in the face, splitting her lip, and that's why she left. And I want you to remember that particular detail. According to Billy, after she left, she started sending him texts claiming that she was going to kill herself. Now, Billy may have said this, but according to Lexi, as well as the incident report, Kayla had never made statements to her family in regards to having any sort of suicidal thoughts or ideations.
She's a mom. Her children... Okay, I'm sorry, people, but let's go over this. Her sister, her best friend in the entire world, said that her children brought the very best out of her. Okay? There is no way that she is going to leave those children. I'm sorry, I don't know her. I don't know her sister, but I'm sorry, I believe her sister in the fact that if those children brought the very best out of her, there is no way on God's green earth that she's going to leave them. None. Zero. Not happening. I think he's lying. Okay, that is my personal opinion. But I'm sorry, I don't believe the word that's coming out of his mouth.
Well, yeah, that is what Lexi said. Basically, those same words. I said the same thing. But either way...
See? We're all in agreement.
The only person, and I want to stress that the only person that ever said she was suicidal or had these suicidal ideations was Billy. Now, Kayla did struggle with her mental health and she was prescribed medication, but just because someone suffers from mental health problems, it does not mean they are suicidal. And Lexi and I spoke about how that is a common misconception. So Kayla allegedly sends this text that she's going to end her life, and then she allegedly sends him a photograph of her in the basement of her home with a belt around her neck, and we'll get to the picture later. At approximately 4:17 a.m., Billy arrives at Kayla's home. He enters and finds Kayla hanging from a pipe in the basement. Now, he cuts her down, and according to the coroner's inquest, he calls 911 while a friend attempts CPR. When police arrive and paramedics arrive, they realize that any life-saving measures would be fruitless because Kayla was already gone. Police speak to Billy and he tells them about his version of what happened and mentions the text and the picture. When police ask to see them, Billy claims he, quote, must have deleted them. I'm sorry. Your girlfriend allegedly threatened suicide with proof, and in your rush to get over to her house, you take the time to delete that proof.
Is it time for me to call shenanigans?
It's interesting. At this point, the coroner arrives, and I'm going to read a portion of the inquest. Quote, Miss Seago was found lying supine on the basement floor. There was a chair near her feet. I was advised the chair was overturned when the police and EMS personnel arrived. A piece of black nylon belt was found on the floor near the decedent's head. The belt appeared to be cut. Also near the decedent's head on the floor was a yellow-handled knife. A bottle of alprazolam, and for those wondering, alprazolam is Xanax, prescribed to Ms. Seago was found on the floor near the decedent. Above the decedent in the ceiling was a black nylon belt which was attached to a pipe in the ceiling. The belt appeared to be cut. Upon examination, there was dried and smeared blood present around Ms. Seago's nose and both hands. There was also an apparent laceration to her bottom lip. Ligature marks with abrasions are present to her neck. Now, I want you to remember there was a cut to her lip and blood on her face. Remember, Billy's friends claimed that he punched Kayla before she left. But then Billy magically finds the picture that Kayla sent him. Not the text, but he finds the picture. And in the picture, which was allegedly taken after she left the friend's house, Kayla is in her basement and there's a black belt around her neck. However, there is not a single mark on her face.
So, again, he's saying all of this, which, I'm sorry, in my personal opinion, I'm not believing a word that is coming out of his mouth. Period. Not happening. Forget it. I don't believe him at all. That's number one. Number two, he miraculously finds this picture. She doesn't have a mark on her face when even his own friends said that he punched her.
And the coroner himself, or the medical examiner that arrived on scene, said himself there was blood on her face and a cut on her lip after this picture was supposedly taken.
Okay, and please tell me that the police are not believing a word that's coming out of his mouth.
I'm going to get to that. Now, because of the lack of abrasions or lacerations to her face, this leads me to believe this picture was taken prior to this day for whatever reason. It's also worth mentioning that Lexi has never seen this picture. She's asked, she's never seen it. It's also worth mentioning that it was said by at least one person that they believe the black belt around her neck in the picture was actually a dog leash and not the belt found when she died. It's also worth mentioning that Kayla's phone was found by police in the living room, not in the basement. So let's play devil's advocate for a second. Even if Kayla sent this picture immediately after returning home that night, which I do not believe, and completely ignoring the lack of laceration on her lip, why would she take the picture in the basement, go upstairs, put her phone down, and then go back down to the basement? That makes no sense, considering it was a very short window of time from when she left to when she died.
If Mr. Billy was so very concerned for her safety, you know, the mother of his children, wouldn't he at the very least, call the police and ask them to do a welfare check? Yeah. If he's so concerned that she's going to do some harm to herself, wouldn't you call the police and say, hey, I got this, I'm really concerned. If I go, you know, there's a restraining order, I can't go there. However, can you please go check on her?
That's my train of thought, but, you know, that's not what happened. Now, it's also important to mention that there was no note, which I found to be incredibly interesting because, as we said, Kayla was a mother, and a mother who loved her children. Now, she didn't have custody of them at this moment, and that was due to an incident involving domestic abuse, and the police were called. They got CPS involved, and they removed the children from the home, but she was fighting to get them back. Now, I wholeheartedly believe that Kayla would not have died by her own hand without saying goodbye to her children. I don't believe it. Lexi doesn't believe it. Her family doesn't believe it.
I don't believe it. I know that means nothing, but I don't believe it.
Like, say, again, playing devil's advocate, say she was suicidal. I do not believe she would not have left a note saying goodbye to her children.
I don't think she would have done it.
I don't think she would have done it to begin with.
No, because of the trauma that she would have put her babies through, and I look, we all know that I call all them babies. Her children. She would not have put her children through that trauma.
No, I agree. So there's no. What interests me the most, though, about this whole thing is the autopsy, and that report was also given to me by Lexi. According to the autopsy report, the primary pathological findings were as follows. Asphyxia due to hanging, ligature abrasions present on the anterior and lateral sides of the neck, angled upward beneath the right ear measuring up to 1 inch in width, more abrasions present on the left side than right, petechia, multiple involving the periorbital skin, pulmonary vascular congestion and edema, mild, focal hemorrhage in the soft tissue anterior to the superior horns of the thyroid cartilage. No evidence of fractures or other injuries. Now, alprazolam and fluoxetine were present in her system. As I said, alprazolam is Xanax, an anti-anxiety medication, and fluoxetine is Prozac, which is an antidepressant. The Prozac was within normal levels, and I will admit the levels for Xanax were higher than the recommended dosage, but if my husband punched me in the face, I would be taking more than the recommended dose as well. I just would.
Well, I would understand that because you'd be traumatized.
Exactly. So I understand the Xanax or the alprazolam being higher than the normal dose. I get that. Now,
and probably she was so distraught over that, she may not have even realized. Like, you take one and you're just so distraught, you end up taking another one and you didn't realize that you took the first one to begin with.
Exactly. So, I mean, I've done that. I am also prescribed Xanax. I have taken more than my dose when I've been very, in the midst of, a panic attack. So, it happens. Now, there's a couple of things I want to talk about. The first being the abrasions to her neck. It is stated that they are higher on the right side, and that's confirmed by the diagram on the report as well. If someone hangs themselves, the abrasions to their neck would be equal on both sides. The only way these marks would be crooked or favoring one side would be if someone was pulling on one side of the person's body while they were hanging, or if it was manual strangulation and they were using an upward motion. I was literally demonstrating this to Lisa.
She was. And the fact is, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. And again, if there's manual strangulation, think about it. Everybody has a dominant side, whether it's your left hand, your right hand. It's your dominant hand. It's your dominant arm. I know myself, I tend to carry things all in one hand because it's stronger than the other. If there is strangulation, again, with that dominant hand is stronger than, if you're right-handed, your right hand is stronger than your left. Or your left hand is stronger than your right, depending on what side it is. That also could be the reason why, because if there is manual strangulation, your dominant hand has more strength to it. So
it's putting more force
more
on one
pressure.
side.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Now, the other thing I found incredibly interesting was a notation made in the coroner's inquest. Quote, the major findings of her autopsy were soft tissue hemorrhage to the larynx and no fracture of the nose. It is the opinion of the forensic pathologist that performed her autopsy that the hemorrhage of the larynx were an unusual finding associated with suicidal hanging, but not unheard of. So I looked this up. According to Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, a vocal fold hemorrhage, which is what this is, quote, occurs when one or more of the blood vessels in the vocal folds breaks open, filling the vocal folds and potentially forming a small ball or hemorrhagic polyp. It is caused by trauma to the vocal folds, such as extensive coughing or extensive screaming. And according to the National Library of Medicine, a German study was done. Quote, the inner soft tissues of the larynx were examined by special preparation of the larynx. Thyroid cartilage was detached from the cricoid and the laryngeal cords, which could then be examined. Bleeding, not visible before, was found in 18 of 40 cases of persons killed by throttling or choking. Bleeding occurred whenever blunt trauma to the throat had taken place. Hemorrhage develops even in cases without damage to the laryngeal skeleton. This bleeding can result from direct compression of the larynx, large and not well-defined bleeding, and can originate indirectly, small hemorrhages mostly in the vocal muscles. The finding of hemorrhages like this can help to demonstrate that the victim has undergone a violent attack on the throat. According to the same website, this is a very rare injury, only occurring around 1% of the time, and in fact, it is usually seen in motor vehicle accidents. Quote, motor vehicle accidents are the primary cause of laryngeal injury, though the frequency has been dramatically reduced with the advent of seatbelts, airbags, and other advances in automotive safety equipment. Other causes include penetrating trauma, assault, attempted strangulation, near hanging, and clothesline type injuries. Latrogenic laryngeal injury can occur during bronchoscopies, emergent intubation, or percutaneous tracheostomy, and is discussed elsewhere in additional articles. I did so much digging, and this is the only small mention of it occurring in hanging, and it's not even likely. Now, the manner by which she died was confirmed to be asphyxiation, but the cause of her death, whether by homicide, suicide, accidental, natural causes, or anything else, was ruled at the inquest to be undetermined, and with that essentially came the end of any sort of investigation.
Well, because they didn't find his fingerprints on her, they say, oh, no, this is how it happened?
I just can't...
Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I can't get past the hemorrhaging in the larynx. It is so rare. So that mention of it occurring in near hanging was like the only mention I found having to do with hanging in general. Any other like medical journal that I read said that it occurred in strangulation. And the pathologist himself admitted that it was weird and highly unusual.
Okay, so here's where I play a little bit of devil's advocate, which I really don't want to do. However, I do understand that the medical examiner could not rule definitively because it could happen. How very rare that may be. It could have happened that way. Not that any one of us, I don't believe any one of us listening or anything believes that for a split second.
No. Now, I will say we're going to talk about Billy really, really quickly.
Do we have to?
Unfortunately. I don't have a lot of information on him, but this is the information I got from Lexi's TikTok account, which I will link in the source notes. As I said, Billy goes by Billy the Kid, or BTK. Again, same initials as Dennis Rader. Irony not lost on me. According to Lexi's TikTok, he allegedly wrote a song about Kayla's death, which just, you could argue, is a coping mechanism, but also could be like a weird, like, bragging thing. He posted a meme on his Facebook following her death of a woman in a trash can that said, quote, sometimes you just have to throw the whole bitch away and start all over, which could just be a distasteful meme, or it could be a bit of a taunt. I'll let you decide. Weeks before Kayla's death, an unnamed woman posted on Facebook that she was in a relationship with Billy, and the following year she posted an image relating to domestic violence, which I doubt is a coincidence. And 2 years later, Billy was wanted for running from police and attempted murder after strangling his former girlfriend, who allegedly looked just like Kayla. Now, he was found and he was held on a $1 million bond, and unfortunately, I don't know if anything came out of this. I couldn't find anything. And it seems that as recently as last year, he was very active on Facebook. So I'm assuming if he served jail time, it was not very long. But according to Lexi's TikTok, text she received from this new victim after the fact showed that this woman believed that Billy murdered Kayla based on what he had done to her. And according to Lexi, the victim expressed more than once that Billy allegedly admitted to killing Kayla, but would tell her that she wouldn't be able to prove it. Again, I don't know. Lexi said in her TikTok that she lost contact with this woman after she heard like maybe they were back together again, so I don't know. But as of today, that's it. That's all that stands on the investigation. As a result of losing their mother, Kayla's children were separated. They're not together.
That's terrible.
So not only did they lose their mother? They lost each other. Kayla's son asked Lexi frequently about his mom, and Lexi's fighting for answers, and no one seems to have any. And I will die on the hill that Kayla did not kill herself.
Oh, I don't believe that for a second.
Based on the picture, no, the abrasions to her neck being crooked, the hemorrhaging in her larynx, like there's, even if it was suicide, just say it was, Lexi and her family deserve to know definitively that it was. And if it wasn't, someone needs to be held responsible for Kayla's murder. And saying it's undetermined is bullshit.
I agree wholeheartedly. Look, her family is suffering. Her children are suffering. And it's not right. And if the police actually believed a word that came out of his mouth, I think you need more training. I think they would need more training, because even I know not to believe a word that came out of that man's mouth. It doesn't make sense. The picture that he miraculously found is complete and utter nonsense.
I want to know the timestamp on that picture. I want to know when it was taken. Because I would bet all the money in the world that it was not taken when he said it was.
Oh, I don't believe that either. How do you want to, he punched her. They said that she was hurt from that punch, yet there's nothing on that picture that indicates anything.
Exactly.
So, yet it was there when the medical examiner showed up.
It doesn't make sense.
None of it makes sense.
Unfortunately, that's all the information I have on Kayla's case. The only mention of her death was her obituary in the media.
Okay, is there any sort of, sometimes, people will start a petition to have a case reopened. Is there any sort of petition that we can all sign to bring to the police to say, hey, you need to reinvestigate? Because I don't know all the ins and outs of this case, and I don't claim to. But from what you have told me, I don't believe that she would have harmed herself. She would have left her children. She would have left her sister. She would have left her family, her friends. None of it. I don't believe it for a second.
I don't believe it either. In regards to a petition, I actually don't believe there is one, but I will talk to Lexi about that. If she sets one up, or I find one, or she has one already going, I will put that in the source notes below. I will also put Lexi's TikTok in the source notes. She is consistently making videos about Kayla's case. And if you guys know anything, I'll put the number below, but please contact the Rockford, Illinois police.
Yes, please. Please give this family justice. I'm not going to say closure, because there's never going to be closure. They're missing a very important piece to their family.
Absolutely.
But it would give them some justice. Justice that they deserve.
Absolutely. And I thank Lexi for trusting us to tell her sister's story.
And we are so very, very, very sorry for your loss. Honestly, so very sorry.
And I thank her for taking the time to speak with me and providing me with the information that she did. And hopefully, in some way, this reaches the right person and they spill their guts. But that is all I have for you today, guys. And we will see you in the next one.
Well, I hope you do have a lovely rest of your week. And I'm sorry that Lexi isn't here, that I could give her a hug. I know that sounds that sounds terrible, I guess. But I wish I could just give her a hug.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for listening to this chapter of the Book of the Dead. And don't forget that you can always connect with us on Instagram. You can connect with us on Twitter, and you can absolutely connect with us on Patreon. We also have a merch store as well that we have frequent discount codes coming out for, so that you guys can get merch hand-drawn by myself at a better cost.
We hope you have a lovely rest of your week. And just remember, please be kind.
And don't forget to always stay safe, stay curious, and stay vigilant. Bye, guys.
Bye.